Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are located on the globe. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the first of the three panels on central banks and inequality that the IMF, the Peterson Institute, and the Council on Economic Policies are organizing today, Friday, and next Monday. So, as you all know, the COVID crisis has severely hit all our economies around the world, and we'll all have to bear the consequences of it. But this crisis has not hit everybody with the same intensity. So vulnerable households have been particularly affected, and they must cope with a more severe impact on their income, while also having fewer financial resources to go through the crisis. So we don't have the figures yet, but it's very likely that the COVID crisis has increased inequality in our economies and will continue to impact inequality for a long time during and after the recovery. So against this background, we at the IMF, the Peterson Institute, and the Council on Economic Policies wanted to take a closer look at what would be the consequences of this shock on inequality for central banks, but also what role central banks can play to mitigate this shock and support vulnerable households going through these rough times. As you know, central banks play and have always played a crucial role in the economy, but most importantly, they've been at the forefront of the general policy reaction to the COVID crisis. So with this series of panels, we would like to focus on three policy fields, which are key for central banks: financial policy, basically micro and macroprudential policies that we will discuss today; financial market infrastructures, like with issues like financial inclusion, digital finance, and financial innovation that we will address in the panel on Friday; and last but not least, monetary policy, which is a topic of next Monday panel. So in all of this panel, we want to better understand what are the links between central bank policies in these fields and inequality, as well as explore how central banks can better take inequality into account in their policies and practices. So today, it's an honor for me to welcome Ratna Sahai, Livio Vonea, Atif Mian, and Joseph Gagnon to speak about our first topic, financial policies and inequality, COVID-19 and beyond. Ratna Sahai is a Deputy Director of the Monetary and Capital Market Department at the International Monetary Fund. She joined the IMF in 1989 and since then has worked in several departments, leading surveillance and program mission to several emerging market and low-income countries, as well as heading analytical project and policy paper and representing the fund in various forums. Liviu Voinea is a senior advisor to the executive director and member of the executive board at the IMF, representing Romania. He is a former deputy governor of the National Bank of Romania, responsible for financial stability. And prior to that, he was Minister Delegate for Budget in the Romanian government and Deputy Minister of Finance. Atif Mian is a John Laporte Professor of Economics, Public Policy and Finance at Princeton University and Director of the Julius Rabinovich Center for Public Policy and Finance at the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. And prior to joining Princeton, he taught at the University of California, Berkeley, at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And Professor Mian's study the connection between finance and the macroeconomy. He is also the author of the acclaimed book, House of Debt with Amir Soufi. And finally, Joseph Gagnon is a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute. Before that, he was visiting associate director at the Division of Monetary Affairs at the US Federal Reserve Board, as well as associate director in the Division of International Finance of the US Federal Reserve Board. He has also served at the US Treasury Department and has taught at the Haas School of Business, University of California, Berkeley. I'm really thankful to Ratna, Liviu, Atif, and Joe to have accepted this invitation to participate to this panel. With financial policies and inequality, we are somewhat in uncharted territories. It's an issue that has not been explored in depth so far. And I'm sure that our panelists today will give us very valuable insights to better understand the nexus between central bank financial policies and inequality. Before giving the floor to Ratna, let me just tell you that we will have a first round of initial thoughts by our four panelists, and then I will open the floor to questions from the audience. If you have questions, please use the Q&A application that you can find at the bottom of your screen, and I will try to relay your question as best as possible to our panelists. So without further ado, let us start this panel, and Ratna, the floor is yours.